the streets of Los Angeles never slept. Neon lights flickered against cracked sidewalks, and the hum of traffic blended with distant sirens. To most people, the city was alive with opportunity, yet for Daniel, a 14-year-old boy with nothing but a battered guitar and a thin jacket, the city was merciless. He had grown used to being invisible, just another kid on the street, another story no one wanted to hear. His days were a blur of hunger and exhaustion. He would wander from block to block, strumming his guitar in subway tunnels or outside convenience stores, hoping someone might toss a coin into his little tin can. Most people hurried past him without a glance. Others looked at him with pity but did nothing. He had learned not to expect kindness. Yet despite the emptiness in his stomach and the chill in his bones, Daniel carried something inside him that no one could see, a voice. It was the only thing his mother had left him before she passed away when he was 9. She had been a singer, not famous, but her lullabies could hush even the stormiest nights. She taught him guitar, told him that music was a way to survive when the world grew too heavy. After she was gone, Daniel clung to those lessons like a lifeline. Every night, beneath the glow of a flickering streetlight, he would close his eyes and sing, not for money, not even for the strangers walking by, but for her. Chapter 2: A Song for Survival. It was a cold Saturday night when Daniel's life began to change. The streets were buzzing with weekend energy, couples heading to restaurants, groups of friends spilling out of bars, tourists snapping photos of neon billboards. Daniel stood on the corner near the subway entrance, strumming his guitar, his hands shaking from the cold. He needed to choose the right song. Something powerful. Something that could pierce through the city's noise and maybe, just maybe, make someone stop and listen. He took a deep breath and began to strum the haunting opening chords of Hotel California. At first, as always, no one noticed. A man in a suit brushed past him, muttering into his phone. A group of teenagers laughed as they hurried into a shop. But as Daniel's voice rose, soft yet powerful, something began to shift. His tone was pure, angelic, soaked in emotion. He sang as if the lyrics belonged to him, as if the story of Hotel California was his own. One by one, people started to turn their heads. A woman carrying groceries froze mid-step, her eyes wide. An old man leaning on a cane stopped to listen, his face softening with wonder. Even the tourists, who had been busy with their cameras, now recorded him instead. By the time Daniel reached the chorus, a crowd had gathered. His voice floated above the city noise like a prayer, pulling strangers together in a way nothing else could. For once, Daniel wasn't invisible. He was luminous. When the final note faded, silence lingered for a heartbeat, thick with awe. Then the crowd erupted in applause, cheers, and whistles. People clapped, some cried, and many reached into their pockets, tossing bills and coins into his can. Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never heard clapping for him before. Chapter 3: The Stranger in the Crowd. Among those in the crowd that night was Richard Lawson, a once renowned music producer who had spent decades in the industry. He had worked with famous artists, seen sold-out concerts, and heard countless voices, but lately, he had grown weary. The music world had become too commercial, too empty of soul. He had nearly given up on finding anything genuine again. But when he heard Daniel's voice, something inside him stirred. It was raw, it was real, it was heartbreaking in its beauty. It reminded him of why he had fallen in love with music in the first place. Richard pushed through the crowd until he stood in front of Daniel. The boy looked nervous, clutching his guitar like a shield. "Son," Richard said gently, "what's your name?" "Daniel, sir," the boy whispered. "You have the voice of an angel," Richard said firmly, his eyes glistening. "And the world needs to hear it." The crowd buzzed with excitement, murmuring to one another. Richard reached into his pocket and handed Daniel his business card. "Come find me," he said. "I want to help you." Daniel stared at the card, stunned. He didn't know whether to believe it. People didn't usually help kids like him. But in Richard's eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years: sincerity. Chapter 4: The Hard Truth. Richard met Daniel the very next day. He bought him breakfast at a small diner, and for the first time in months, Daniel ate until he was full. Between bites, he told Richard about his life. About his mother, about the nights he slept in shelters or under bridges, about how music was the only thing that kept him alive. Richard listened without interrupting, his heart breaking. He had seen talent in many forms, but never like this. Daniel didn't just sing songs, he lived them. Taking Daniel in wasn't easy. Richard had his own struggles, and the boy was wary of trusting adults. But slowly, a bond formed. Richard gave him a room, meals, and more importantly, encouragement. He bought him a new guitar, though Daniel still kept his old battered one, saying it reminded him of his mother. Then came the day Richard decided to put Daniel on a real stage. Chapter 5: The First Performance. It was a small theater, not huge but packed with people. Richard had spread the word, telling friends and colleagues that they needed to hear something extraordinary. Daniel, dressed in simple clothes but holding his guitar with quiet dignity, stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the crowd enormous compared to the subway corner. For a moment, his hands trembled. The old fear returned: what if they laughed? What if he wasn't good enough? But then he remembered his mother's voice: when you sing, Daniel, sing like the world Sing like the world is listening, even if it isn't. He closed his eyes and began to play the opening chords of Hotel California. The theater fell silent. Every ear tuned to his voice, every heart caught in his melody. His angelic tone filled the room, carrying with it the weight of his story, his pain, his hope. By the time he reached the final verse, tears streamed down faces in the audience. When the last note faded, the theater erupted. People stood, clapping, shouting, some even crying openly. Daniel stood frozen, overwhelmed. He had never felt love like this, not from strangers, not from anyone since his mother. He realized then that music wasn't just survival anymore, it was his gift to the world. Chapter 6: A Ripple of Kindness. News of Daniel's voice spread quickly. Clips of his street performance and theater debut went viral online. Within weeks, millions had heard him. He was invited to perform at larger venues, to share his story, to inspire. But Daniel never let fame change him. He remembered the cold nights, the hunger, the loneliness. He used his new platform to raise awareness for homeless children, performing at charity concerts, donating portions of his earnings to shelters. One evening, after a major performance, Daniel returned to that same subway corner where it had all begun. He set down his old guitar and started to play Hotel California again, this time not for survival, but as a thank you to the city, to the strangers who had stopped to listen, and to the mother who had given him his song. As he sang, a new crowd gathered, and somewhere in the back, a little boy with torn shoes watched with wide eyes. Daniel noticed him. After the performance, he knelt down and handed the boy his old guitar. "This is for you," he said softly. "Play it. Sing. Don't ever stop." The boy's eyes filled with tears as he hugged the guitar to his chest. Chapter 7: The Message. Daniel's story became more than music. It became a testament to the power of kindness, to the idea that one moment of compassion can change the course of a life. Richard's decision to stop that night, the strangers who chose to listen, the applause that gave Daniel courage, all of it created ripples that touched millions. In the end, Daniel taught the world something profound, that behind every forgotten soul lies a treasure waiting to be discovered. And that sometimes, the greatest gift we can give is simply to stop, to listen, and to believe in someone when no one else does.